Psalm 74 is a communal lament attributed to Asaph, expressing the deep anguish and sorrow of God's people in the face of devastating destruction, likely the Babylonian destruction of Jerusalem and the Temple. The psalmist begins by crying out to God, questioning why he has rejected them and allowed their enemies to wreak havoc on their sacred places. The psalmist vividly describes the desolation, with enemies destroying everything in the sanctuary and setting fire to the temple. The psalmist reflects on the severity of the situation, noting the complete desecration of God's dwelling place. He recounts how the invaders have smashed the carved work and burned the meeting places of God in the land. This destruction leads to a sense of abandonment, as there are no more signs of God's presence, no prophets left to guide them, and no indication of how long this suffering will last. The community feels lost and forsaken in their darkest hour. In the midst of this despair, the psalmist recalls God's past mighty deeds and sovereignty over creation. He speaks of God's power in splitting the sea, crushing the heads of the sea monsters, and drying up the ever-flowing rivers. The psalmist remembers how God established the sun and moon and set the boundaries of the earth, affirming his control over the natural world. This reflection serves as a reminder of God's ability to deliver and restore, even in the face of overwhelming destruction. The psalm concludes with a plea for God to remember his covenant and to act against the ongoing oppression and desecration. The psalmist calls upon God to rise up and defend his cause, not letting the oppressed be put to shame and allowing the poor and needy to praise his name once again. The psalmist asks God to remember the insults and blasphemies of the enemy and to bring about justice. Psalm 74 is a powerful expression of communal grief and a fervent call for God's intervention and restoration, grounded in the memory of his past acts of deliverance. Let's now read Psalms chapter 74. Maskil of Asaph, O God, why hast thou cast us off forever? Why doth thine anger smoke against the sheep of thy pasture? Remember thy congregation, which thou hast purchased of old, the rod of thine inheritance, which thou hast redeemed, this Mount Zion, wherein thou hast dwelt. Lift up thy feet unto the perpetual desolations, even all that the enemy hath done wickedly in the sanctuary. Thine enemies roar in the midst of thy congregations, they set up their ensigns for signs. A man was famous according as he had lifted up axes upon the thick trees. But now they break down the carved work thereof at once with axes and hammers. They have cast fire into thy sanctuary, they have defiled by casting down the dwelling place of thy name to the ground. They said in their hearts, let us destroy them together, they have burned up all the synagogues of God in the land. We see not our signs, there is no more any prophet, neither is there among us any that knoweth how long. O God, how long shall the adversary reproach? Shall the enemy blaspheme thy name forever? Why withdrawest thou thy hand, even thy right hand? Pluck it out of thy bosom. For God is my King of old, working salvation in the midst of the earth. Thou didst divide the sea by thy strength, thou breakst the heads of the dragons in the waters. Thou breakst the heads of Leviathan in pieces, and gavest him to be meat to the people inhabiting the wilderness. Thou didst cleave the fountain and the flood, thou driedst up mighty rivers. The day is thine, the night also is thine, thou hast prepared the light and the sun. Thou hast set all the borders of the earth, thou hast made summer and winter. Remember this, that the enemy hath reproached, O Lord, and that the foolish people have blasphemed thy name. O deliver not the soul of thy turtle-dove unto the multitude of the wicked, forget not the congregation of thy poor forever. Have respect unto the covenant, for the dark places of the earth are full of the habitations of cruelty. O let not the oppressed return ashamed, let the poor and needy praise thy name. Arise, O God, plead thine own cause, remember how the foolish man reproacheth thee daily. Forget not the voice of thine enemies, the tumult of those that rise up against thee increaseth continually. This ends our reading of Psalms chapter 74.